There's never a dull moment when it comes to Minnesota sports. Whether it's positive or negative.
The Yankees have swept the Twins.
Minnesota Sports Chat has you covered. Talking nothing but Minnesota sports all year long. It's time now for the soon-to-be award-winning, if only in his own mind, Minnesota Sports Chat with your host, Ross Brendel.
Edition number 191 of the soon-to-be award-winning Minnesota Sports Chat. Edition number 190 available in this feed, dropped yesterday with Darren Doogie Wolfson from KSTP Channel 5 and Score North here in the Twin Cities. This is the Minnesota Golden Gophers football review and preview edition with Daniel House from GophersGuru.com. He is on the X machine at Daniel House MN. Gophers and Illinois set for 2:30 p.m. this upcoming Saturday at Huntington Bank Stadium. Per the ESPN machine, your Golden Gophers are a 1.5-point favorite over the Fighting Illini of Illinois. Daniel, my guy, how you doing?
Doing well. Ready for the home stretch of the Big Ten West race beginning in November. It all changes, man. It's time to see who is going to take this thing in a weird year.
If you throw out the COVID year, I believe, and this is a credit to the head coach and where the program's at, I believe this is the fourth season in a row the Gophers have went into November with a chance at the Big Ten West title in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can ask for is being in the mix. I mean, Minnesota, I will say, over the course of every season under Fleck, the one thing you can say is the team has improved. They have made strides in a lot of different areas. And, you know, maybe there's some bumps in the road occasionally, but to be in the mix when November football begins, hey, it's always fun.
Part of that improvement that I think allows the team to improve is the almost always consistent running game this past week against Michigan State. The consistency in the run game came from a Nubin and not the one most might be thinking of.
Nubin got a great block. Nubin, end zone, touchdown Gophers. First career touchdown for Jordan Nubin.
Jordan Nubin rushes for over 200 yards and scores 2 tutties, as the kids like to say. I really do not like that word. I don't even know why I chose to use it right there. But you know what? I don't really know what more you can say other than you're just happy for the kid. A true grinding performance, Daniel. I don't think anybody, including probably himself, would say there's a lot of breakaway or separation speed. But he's a good power runner. He falls forward. He finds the creases. And you know what? If he's getting 2, 3, 4 every time, that's a good recipe no matter who the running back is for the Gophers.
I thought Jordan Nubin played phenomenal. I mean, the ability to press the hole, let blocks set up, see the field, outside zone, they're able to run it super effectively. Did some cool things with formations as the game went on based on how Michigan State was playing them. You can read that over on the site. I thought the ground game execution was strong, and you know, that drive right before halftime was pivotal. I mean, to be able to go down the field and score a touchdown, bat up on your own 5, 4 really strong hits in the pass game. They show a pressure look and bail out of it. You get man-to-man coverage, probably not the look Minnesota was looking for specifically, but Daniel Jackson runs a great route, gets separation with a little hesitation at the top of the route. Ethan puts the ball to money. That was arguably the best drive passing game-wise all season at the end of the half there. We had accurate balls, sound execution, attacking the looks. Brevin Spanford got involved in the first half of that game, hitting down the seam, getting a one-on-one with the linebacker. You know, Minnesota in the second half, after that interception mistake, they just started pounding the rock. They wore them down. Those 3-4 yard carries started becoming 7, 8. 9-yard carries and then 25-yard carries, and just slowly started to wear down Michigan State. It felt like there was a Spartan defensive lineman down just about every other play throughout that game. It was insane how many players were down on the field for Michigan State on defense. It felt like the game took forever to play because of that.
For Kaliakmanis specifically, he had that early fumble, which I know he'd like to have back. He had a pretty bad interception, but overall, the passing numbers, albeit against a defense that I think is largely suspect, especially in the passing game, fairly efficient, 14 to 22 for 200 yards. He had that big touchdown pass at the end of the first half, leading that 95-yard drive, which was primarily done in the passing game. In an odd way, Daniel, I kind of liked where that drive set up because I think it forced the Gophers to pass more than they probably wanted to, and maybe got Kaliakmanis in a little bit of a rhythm at the right point, which then in return actually helped the running game a little bit, even open up some bigger holes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're able to pass the ball effectively, stretch the defense out a little bit, there's some good pre-snap reads. You got an RPO where he makes a good decision, and then he identifies a 5-man box and gives it to Nubin to pick up the first down right near midfield. So there's some good, pre-snap diagnosis going on, which is what you want to see from a young quarterback who's gaining experience. There's still bumps in the road. I mean, there's going to be highs and lows, and the development is continuing to grow as games go on, and Minnesota's got to figure some things out offensively still, just execution wise. Like, it's been the name of the game. Like, if you go back this season and describe it with one adjective across all three phases, it's execution. And I feel like we say that every week about, make the play here, make the play there. Like, in these close games here at the end of the season where you're going to need it, like, for example, when you're playing Illinois this week, Wisconsin, Purdue, the 3 or 4 plays can dictate the outcome of some of these games. Where if you don't execute, you don't do it right, you can end up losing the game because I think Illinois out of a bye week, getting healthy, refocusing. This is a game where you can't make a whole bunch of mistakes and get behind early.
Yeah, I think if you turn the ball over early against Illinois in the exact same fashion like you did against Michigan State or almost any other team in the Big Ten, except for maybe a few, you probably don't win that game. So from a coaching standpoint, I think it's one of those wins where you're happy to get the win, but there's still a lot to coach. And I think we still see a lot of that inconsistency from the Gophers. At this point, 4 games left in the regular season. If you win 3 of 4, mainly everybody you play outside of Ohio State, and you get a tiny bit of help, you will be Big Ten West champions. Help being you need Iowa to still lose at least one more time. Preferably a couple more times would be fun, but at least one more time. In the passing game specifically, Daniel, I mentioned Kaliakmanis, his 200 yards passing last Saturday against Michigan State. Well, again, 120 of those went to Daniel Jackson. So you're still talking about, well, rough math. Kaliakmanis has 1,123 passing yards this year. 507 of those to Daniel Jackson. So that's over 40%.
Yeah, Daniel Jackson's been really good.
He has been really good. And I'm not taking anything away from him.
Right.
But you still would like to see some other guys step up and catch some passes.
Well, that's the challenge is I believe effective offensive play where you're efficient, you're able to spread the ball around to all your playmakers to create challenges for the defense. Make them have to adjust to a variety of different skill sets and players that have different styles of play. That creates space in the passing game. When you create space in the passing game, you open up the box to be able to run the ball so you have a multi-dimensional offense. So, yeah, I mean, ideally you want to get everybody involved in the passing game. But I do think like it comes down to what's the defense giving you? What can your personnel handle? What can your quarterback handle? What can you put on his plate? There are a lot of internal variables here that, we don't know. We're not there day to day. We don't know what's going on around there. But I will say this much based on, Daniel Jackson's play. I mean, he's been unreal. Route running, getting separation, the details of his game, catching the ball consistently. Like, Daniel Jackson is is emerging as one of the better receivers in the Big Ten Conference, and that's a credit to Minnesota's development and the work that he's put in to really hone in on the details, which I think was the challenge this offseason for Daniel as he moved forward to just take his game to the next level.
Saw a couple Michigan State fans with signs or even T-shirts hoping/praying that Urban Meyer is their next head coach.
Really?
I'm not convinced it'll be Urban Meyer, but my question to you as it pertains to Michigan State is, where do they turn and where do you think they'll eventually settle, or what type of head coach do you think they'll settle on?
I could see a Jake Dickert at Washington State type of coach where you're out in no man's land right now based on what's going on with realignment. Wisconsin guy has played well against the Big Ten teams, can build a style of play that fits the conference well, a younger guy. I'm keeping an eye on Dickert, but Michigan State, based on their leadership, how they do things around there, I've learned to expect the unexpected, where it could be someone way out of left field. Another name I'd say is Elko from Duke, potentially maybe wants to get over into the Big Ten. I think, Narduzzi was a name that I heard for a while, but it sounds like maybe that's been backed off on based on how Pittsburgh's been playing. They're 2-6 right now. And, he was in the mix the first time, apparently, from what I've heard, before Mel Tucker got that job. But we'll keep an eye on that. Maybe Narduzzi gets back in it, but I would say based on how they're playing, probably not.
Another news item from around the Big Ten that mildly pertains to the Gophers and former interim athletic director at the University of Minnesota. I believe that was the title that they gave her. Beth Getz is also now the interim athletic director at the University of Iowa. They made the decision this week with a month left in the season. I think that will tell you the amount of doors that were being knocked on and the negative publicity and how much the athletic department was up against this Brian Ferentz thing. They made the decision to move on from Brian with a month left in the season. He's going to coach out the year and I believe into the bowl game, but kind of odd. I know we were eventually headed this way anyways, but the amount of pressure the Iowa athletic department must have been under to make this move and announce it with a month left in the season is incredible. And also kind of incredible that Beth Getz has now been the interim athletic director at two major Big Ten universities.
Well, the deal is go watch Kirk Ferentz's press conference on that matter. I mean, he's
not happy. He's not happy.
He tell you what, he is not happy about how all that went down, especially that it happened in the middle of the season. But there's got to be some more to this story, in my opinion. There has got to be more to this story, even on top of the pressure that's been placed upon Iowa's administration to do something about this. I'm not convinced Kirk Ferentz will be back there next year. He can say he wants to continue coaching and all this right now. How will these final four games go? If they perform poorly, is Beth Getz looking to make a change here? So she's like, hey, I'm making a coordinator change. I want to see how, you respond, how everybody handles the situation and maybe dictate a path forward. Or does Kirk just walk away? I mean, I know he was on his radio show the other night and he basically backpedaled because he really wouldn't answer the question about whether he wanted to keep coaching. And he indicated maybe a couple more years, but I don't know if with everything going on down there, they might be looking to make a fresh start as realignment happens and they try to get ahead of that.
Yeah, his press conference this week, he talked an awful lot, which I love these press conferences because people are going to ask questions, as you know, but you're so seldomly going to get any answers or real answers. He must have said 10 times in response to 5 different questions that my only focus is on these next 4 games and the bowl game that comes after that, which when you start saying things like that, it makes me think that there is at least a chance that this will be it for you. Because
but what I'm saying these last 4 games, could they lose all 4 of these? Like, I don't think that these games are absolute lock wins for Iowa.
You know what, though, House? It's a lot like the Big Ten West. You can make a case the Gophers should win 3 of their final 4 games. They could also lose all three of those games, right?
I know.
Look at Iowa's schedule. They should win out and win the Big Ten West. But they could easily lose 1, 2, or 3 games and not. I said yesterday with Doogie, Daniel, if I had to pick sitting here today, I still believe Wisconsin will win the Big Ten West.
Yeah,
which
they
then
have the
means
easiest schedule.
Which then means I believe Wisconsin will likely beat Minnesota. And I don't know if I'm ready to make that jump, but just logically, especially last week watching them play Ohio State, they just look like the best of the average teams at this point.
I believe Wisconsin will have a slip up here at the end. Nebraska is a team to watch because defensively, that code is hard to crack. That scheme is tough. It's very, very different than what a lot of these teams see. You got to prepare for it. So I'm telling you, I'm not closing the door on the Huskers yet. I mean,
no, they're in the mix.
Crazy. They are right there, man. I mean, you look at their schedule. I mean, everybody talks about UW having an easy schedule. Michigan State on the road. They got Maryland. They're at Wisconsin. And then last game, they're hosting Iowa. They could win out in a scenario, and which would be beneficial for Minnesota because Minnesota, if they end up tied with Nebraska at the end of the year, Minnesota's got the tiebreaker because they beat them head to head. And they're playing teams like Iowa and Wisconsin, who you're going to be battling with for the Big Ten West title. So I think Minnesota fans, on the outside, I mean, they're rooting for the Huskers right now.
You could make a case right now, looking around the Big Ten West, that the only 2 teams that realistically don't probably have a chance to win the Big Ten West are the 2 teams with 1 win in the conference. That would be Purdue and Illinois, the Gophers' next 2 opponents. If the Gophers want any chance at winning the Big Ten West, you need to find a way to win these next 2 games. That starts with Bret Bielema and Illinois at a dentist's favorite time from Huntington Bank Stadium this upcoming Saturday at 2:30. PJ on Illinois and his budding relationship and friendship with the head coach at the University of Illinois, Bret Bielema, from his press conference earlier this week.
I got a ton of respect for him. He's a good friend of mine. He's won everywhere he's been. And, especially when you look at Illinois and their team, they're really tough. They take over his personality and, he's a really tough individual. And you talk about they're hard-nosed, tough. They're going to run the football. They're going to stop the run. Their defense, it seems simplistic. It's very, very complicated. They got some of the best players in the league on their defense. And you can go across their front 7 and find probably 2 of the best defensive linemen in the conference right there in Illinois.
Proof that even in friendships, Daniel House, opposites attract. Can you think of 2 more opposite personalities than Bret Bielema and PJ Fleck? Yet they both speak of this admiration for each other. I love it. Nothing brings people together like college football.
Style of play wise and mentality standpoint,
very similar.
Personality types, totally different. So yeah, I mean, Bret Bielema's beat the Gophers 9 times, 0-9.
Yes,
Minnesota is against Bret Bielema. So can the streak finally end? You broke the Iowa streak. Can you break the Bret Bielema drought that has plagued Minnesota for the longest time? I believe this is the best chance to do so, but I also think the theme that I found when I went back and watched Illinois is, first, I don't think people talk enough about the schedule draw that they had, all these Friday night games that they had to play early in the year. And then they had that short week to get ready to go to Kansas and play up offense. It's just, I mean, there's smoke and mirrors and misdirection and tons of stuff you got to get ready for. They had a tough draw with that. And then second, the turnovers and penalties this team has had. They're one of the bottom teams in penalties, averaging like over almost 7 a game. Penalty yardage, they're bottom 15 team in college football right now in that area. I said if Illinois wants a chance in this game, they got to commit 4 or fewer penalties, 1 turnover or less, and they got to start fast. They're going to have to run the ball effectively. That's been the difference for this team offensively, is everything that they do is built off that running game. They want to influence the second and third level, tie the run and pass together. Last year, they had the efficiency of Chase Brown, who's so elusive and dynamic. That has been the case this year. Fagan, the running back, the big running back, like 6'3", 250 he's listed at on the scouting report and on the depth chart. That's crazy. Got to be able to swarm to the ball, wrap up. But Defensively, they haven't been as good just because pass rush, hasn't lived up to expectations. That secondary is younger. They lost 3 really good players in Sidney Brown, Devin Witherspoon, and Quan Martin back there. And that's definitely hurt them. But I do think that the ultimate equalizer in this game will be turnover battle and penalties. We know Minnesota has been good in those areas up until last week, where you had 2 turnovers right away and then 5 empty possessions to start the game. You cannot start that way against Illinois, because if they get out to a good lead, these 2 teams stylistically are not built to play, climbing upward offensively. So whoever starts this game fast is going to gain an edge.
Vegas believes the game will be close. Gophers favored by 1.5. Our favorite ESPN matchup predictor gives the Gophers a 59% chance at winning. And if you care about the weather, which I do because I will be there, right now calling for sunny skies and a daytime high of right around 45 degrees. So a pretty nice fall afternoon at Huntington Bank Stadium if that forecast holds. On the game specifically, you talked a little bit about it, but this just feels like a one-possession game, because I don't think either team stylistically, unless the other team is turning the ball over and one defense shows up more than the other, kind of feels impossible for a team to win this game by double digits or more, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of external factors like turnovers and penalties. Like you said, that's been the problem for Illinois throughout the season. I think they had 9 penalties against Wisconsin for 79 yards. They didn't turn the ball over, though. They've been taking better care of the ball recently. So that'll be the biggest factor. And keep in mind, Johnny Newton, potential first-round draft pick defensive tackle, is out for the first half due to a targeting penalty that occurred in the Wisconsin game right before their bye week. So keep an eye on that development. Minnesota needs to certainly jump on that. It sounds like Keith Randolph, his counterpart, is going to play. He's been hurt. Reggie Love, a running back who was going to be a big part of what they did this season, has been hurt as well, and he may return. So you're coming out of a bye week where people got healthy. Their adjustments were made. I'm thinking there might be a little bit more design quarterback run. They've dashed that in throughout game plans this year. Keep an eye on that, and the scrambling ability of Altmaier. My goodness, like, that guy can run all over. He is so athletic. Been under pressure for a lot of dropbacks, but he leads all Big Ten quarterbacks in scrambles and first downs converted via pressure. So maintaining rush lanes, retracing the rush is going to be very, very important for Minnesota's defense in this game.
On Altmaier, I actually thought he would be much more of a difference maker, at least statistically, than he has been at this point. 10 touchdown passes, 9 interceptions, over 1,600 passing yards. So that's not bad. I mean, there's an outside chance he'll push 3,000 passing yards if Illinois is able to get to a bowl game. However, a loss this week would really hurt that. That would drop them to 6 losses. What has been the issue there? I mean, he showed some flashes at Ole Miss. So is this just getting used to a new system and there's been issues with the offensive line? Why is he not maybe taken that step yet that I think a lot of people thought, or at least add a dynamic to Illinois that I think a lot of people thought he could add?
I don't think he's been poor. There's been variables where offensive line play, not good enough, inconsistent. Running game hasn't been there. Like I said, huge factor of that offense being able to influence with the run game together with the passing attack. That hasn't been there. Altmaier loves to scramble. He's very dynamic at the second play. Receivers. The lack of separation from Illinois' receivers has been very apparent. The one guy who can get open, run dynamic routes is Isaiah Williams, who feels like he's been at Illinois for like 20 years now. Pat Bryant and Washington, the 2 receivers there, it's like 26% of their total targets are contested. And so many contested balls, which tells you they're not getting separation. They have to make every play in traffic. So quarterback play hasn't been the sole problem. It's been offensive line. It's been system. It's been running the ball. It's been wide receivers. Like, you go right down the list. Penalties, getting backed up because of penalties. I think they have like 12 false starts this year. Perplexing to me. I thought Illinois would play so much better this year. Easily one of the more disappointing teams, not just in the Big Ten, but in the country for me.
I feel like this is a game that Illinois could easily win, but to your point earlier about Bret Bielema being 9-0 against the Gophers have a lot more to play for here than Illinois does. There's still a lot in front of the Gophers, more in front of them than Illinois. So if not now, when do they beat the University of Illinois? So I say the Gophers win. I don't know how or specifically why. To me, it feels like a 23-20, 24-21 type of game. But I like the Gophers to find a way to get it done. I would not be shocked in the least if they do not. I'm never shocked by the quality of my Beans coffee. Big shout out to Beans Coffee Company for supporting Minnesota Sports Chat. Hard to believe it. It is the holiday season. Daniel House, happy Honda Days. Very Merritt Toyotathon season to you. Make sure you check out coffeebybeans.com. Perfect gift for the coffee fanatic and drinker in your life. This is really great stuff. Small batch coffee brewed in Mankato, Minnesota. They'll ship it anywhere in the United States for free on all orders of $35 or more. Light roast, medium roast, dark roast, caffeine-free, cold brew. They have it all. Check out the website, coffeebybeans.com. That is coffeebybeans.com. Use the promo code SportsChat. You'll save a little bit of cash at checkout. Folks, honestly, this is just really darn good coffee. I love it. I drink it every morning. I'm drinking it right now as we record this edition of Minnesota Sports Chat. Promo code SportsChat at coffeebybeans.com. Taking a look around the conference, Daniel House, not a ton jumps out to me. Maybe Maryland could be a little pesky with Penn State, but I never, ever, ever, ever believe in Maryland football, and we're starting to see why I don't, as they've now stacked up the losses as much as they stacked up the wins earlier. Iowa at Northwestern could be kind of fun because of the Wrigley Field element, and neither team can score a ton unless Northwestern's playing Minnesota, but we'll leave that there. Other than that, just kind of a blah day in the Big Ten. Maybe Indiana could jump up and surprise Wisconsin. I don't know, but when you look around the schedule, Daniel, for as much as I don't love another 2:30 start for the University of Minnesota, it makes sense because there's just really no marquee games this week.
I feel the matchups are all concentrated into this month of November, like the middle and back half, because the slate of games from like the end of October here to the early stages in November, the matchups just haven't been very intriguing. And that's done by design. They want all the hype and buzz coming right when all the division races are going on. I want to see how this whole Michigan sign stealing thing plays out. ESPN reporting the coaches had a meeting that, they were very passionate about, stepping in and trying to do something here. Like, is there a point where the Big Ten Conference goes, Michigan, you're not playing in the Big Ten title game? Like, does it get to that point as more information comes out on this matter? Like, that's what I'm watching for down the stretch here. What more comes out on this thing, and how does it potentially impact the back half of the season here?
The Michigan thing is interesting because I stumbled into the college football playoff reveal. They did the first one, I think. Was it the first one this week?
Yeah, that's the first one.
So I stumbled into that, and I typically don't give that much of a time of day because it's going to change so many times between now and bowl season. But if you are going to watch one, I guess the first one's kind of important because it kind of lets you know where teams are at and what they're maybe up against if they want to move in to the top four. But the committee chairman basically said the sign stealing issue, he didn't necessarily say we don't care about it, but he said it's an NCAA issue. It's not our issue. So, yeah. And we all know the college football playoff, they always take a stand, don't they? They're always on the forefront of taking a stand. But I don't know. I mean, if you have the committee saying, look, it's not our issue, well, I don't know. Is the conference going to say you can't go? Because the conference is going to want as many teams in the mix as possible. And if Michigan doesn't have a loss, are they going to pull Michigan out?
But it's not like there's not a viable team in the conference like Ohio State, that could potentially go in that case. But, I think everybody associated with college football, they won't admit it, but they're hoping Ohio State wins in that last game against Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
Because that takes a lot of pressure off. But I want to see how the conference reacts to this. I feel like maybe the conference was a little bit surprised by the reaction that they're getting from the coaches and the people around the Big Ten about this whole matter. And so what will they do? That is what I want to see in the next couple of weeks here as more stuff swirls around. What does that do to the Big Ten race at the end of the season? Is there any implication, or do they just stand pat and wait till the end of the year?
There are some mildly intriguing matchups around college football. Notre Dame and Clemson could be watchable. You also look at Missouri at Georgia. Missouri can score a ton of points, but they really can't stop anybody. But that could be a little bit of fun between the hedges. Also, one of my favorite rivalries. I love state versus state rivalries. Oklahoma State, always kind of fun to watch. Well, mainly because you just got beautiful uniforms all across the field for the most part. So there are some watchable games this week. And Washington taking on USC. Washington right now on the outside looking in of the college football playoff. They have not played extraordinarily well the last few weeks, but they'll have a chance to maybe right that ship a little bit against USC. Caleb Williams also will have a chance to maybe get back on Heisman pace, although I think he's fallen pretty far off, in Alabama and LSU. So there are some games worth of note, just maybe not in the Big Ten this weekend.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on a couple of games, really zoning in on Washington, USC. I want to see what is the line for that game right now. Washington's 3. I'm surprised that Washington's 3. I think that USC's might be able to run the ball on Washington's defense. That's what I've been watching. Like, Washington's run defense is a liability, and I think that's going to hurt them in a game eventually here where someone's able to outscore them and they get into a slugfest where it's just a shootout. This could be that type of game. If I was in Vegas, I'd definitely be throwing some money on USC +3.
The 2-7 Hawaii Rainbow Warriors are at the now suddenly surging 2-6 Nevada Wolfpack and soon to be Gopher football opponent. Nevada has now won 2 in a row after, I believe, losing 16 or 17 in a row. I'm sure you'll be glued to that one on CBS Sports Network the 3rd.
There needs to be a bowl game every year where like the worst teams play each other.
I'm all for it. For it.
Just make this bowl game where we get to watch the worst teams duke it out for a big prize.
Some wretched 1-11 versus 0-12 team. I'm all for it.
Hey.
House, what else is at gophersguru.com the masses should know about in closing?
There's a big breakdown on the run game, what they're able to do to gain edge versus Michigan State. Previews coming of the matchup between Minnesota and Illinois. Everything that you need to know. $5 a month gets you access to the content. gophersguru.com.
You're the best. This time next week, we will preview and review. Well, we'll review Gophers in Illinois. We'll preview Gophers at West Lafayette and the Purdue Boilermakers. How'd our boy do last night? Kent State was playing. Did he notch a win?
Oh, man, Kenny, I felt so bad, man.
They didn't get it done.
Akron came back. They were down 17 in the fourth quarter, came back. Largest comeback win for Akron since 2018.
Oh, no. What Bowden was coaching there? Terry? Was that Terry Bowden years ago?
Oh, God.
He's not there now, but that was Terry Bowden, wasn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
Terry Bowden would be proud if that's who it was. Daniel, I'm always proud of you. Thank you, my man.
Thanks for having me.
That is Daniel House at Daniel House MN on the X Machine, founder, president, CEO, grand poobah of gophersguru.com. Sign up right now for all that amazing Gopher sports content. I'm Ross Brendel saying thank you so much for listening to this edition of Minnesota Sports Chat. Please rate and review kindly. We'll talk again next week.